Good morning, everyone. Thanks again for choosing to spend some of your day with us. I'm really looking forward to our presentation today. We're going to be talking all things cybersecurity. What's going on in 2025? What are some challenges organizations are facing as they try to build out their program and kind of hean off some of these threats? And what are some solutions? How to build an effective program from scratch? My name is Christopher Salone. I'm a director here at Fox Point Solutions, which is the cybersecurity, IT consulting, and compliance team within the Bonadio Group. And before I let my co-presenter introduce himself, Jared, it has been a pleasure to get to know him in the short amount of time that we've had in our conversations, learning with him. I'm really thrilled to have him with us today. He's going to introduce himself and kick things off. Jared?
I appreciate that, Christopher. Thank you. Jared Brennan. I am a virtual CISO, a fractional CISO with Side Channel, a company that specializes in helping organizations build security programs while they might not have the resources to hire either a full-time CISO or an engineering team. As our company continues to grow, we continue to meet our customers where they are. So um, the relationship that Christopher and I have, we work together, our organizations work together. Maybe no surprise that as you're building out cybersecurity programs, having an organization come in and audit the work, and especially when we need things like SOC 2 Type 2 attestations. We found a terrific partner here in Fox Point. But just very briefly, I am not very straight-laced, folks. I went to school to be a music teacher, ended up in cybersecurity, and 25 years later, still trying to figure that one out. But I found that my education background has helped quite a bit throughout my career, and it presents me opportunities like the one today to share 25 years of experience over the course of the next 45 minutes. So again, I really appreciate Christopher, the Fox Point team, setting this up and the opportunity for us to talk together today. There we go. And you want me to run point,
Oh,
Christopher?
yeah. Yep,
Just to
go right
clarify, no.
ahead.
So Christopher and I are going to be back and forth. So some of this will be conversational. Some of this will bring our individual expertise to the fore. But we're centering today's conversation around that intersection between security and compliance, knowing that security in and of itself can be incredibly effective and can also be equally misguided in serving the organization's need. Likewise, compliance can help organizations achieve their business goals or create unnecessary burden, unnecessary overhead in operating cost and additional complexity in how organizations operate. Both Side Channel and Fox Point are pretty dedicated in helping organizations understand how to find the right balance between the two. And Chris, if you could jump to the next slide, please. And so uh, we take a step back when an organization engages either of us to understand from the business perspective, from the ELT, executive leadership team, the board, from input that you're getting from your third parties, your partners, your customers, your clients. Why are we doing any of this security and compliance stuff in the first place? The most common answer is risk identification, risk management. We know in today's world that if you use technology to deliver goods or services, information technology and operational technology to your customers and clients, that you are inherently accepting risk. And there are criminals who will take advantage of gaps or weaknesses in that technology for their own gain. And there are also availability concerns. Sometimes things don't work the way that we thought they would. And suddenly we've got a manufacturing line that's production down, or one of my peers supports a shipping company. And one of the most important pieces of technology in the environment is the printer at the end of the dock. If that printer can't print shipping labels, they can't ship. And as a shipping company, that's a big deal. So understanding what these risks are to the business and how we can appropriately manage them, how we can put people, process, and technology-based controls in place that will still enable the business, the organization to move quickly, while at the same time protecting against either intentional or accidental damage. And then when we look at this through that lens of compliance, there have been quite a few standards bodies, regulatory agencies, federal organizations that have said you need to follow these rules if you're going to operate within this vertical. I know we've got a lot of financial services organizations who wanted to attend today's webinar. You are no stranger to regulation, I'm sure. And what we've found is that instead of compliance being a burden, we've got clients, and I've got two that I'll talk about later on, who are using compliance as a business enabler, more so as a competitive advantage. And finally, that need to balance security and innovation. I have never worked with a business leader who said, "Wait, slow down. We're making too much money. We're doing too good of a job with our customers. Let's pull back." There's always this need, this drive for innovation, for improving, for getting better, for adopting the new bright and shiny technology that we don't fully understand, that we don't have security controls around, but uh, a fraction of the business is already using it and putting critical data into it. And I'm sure you have an idea of what we'll talk about there. So these three drivers, or as we've said here, the purpose behind why we're doing this in the first place, are pretty common among our clients. And I suspect some of the folks here on the call would say, yeah, that resonates. Chris, if you want to jump to the next. So I don't need you to raise your hand necessarily. You're welcome to. I don't have visibility. We've got quite a few people. If you can hear the little ding, I haven't figured out how to turn that off in Teams yet. A lot of folks in the conversation today, but just take a look at this list and tell me, do you recognize any of these acronyms? Outside of the group of us here on the call, this is nonsense to a lot of people. If I were to ask my wife to come in and take a look, she would roll her eyes, tell me I'm talking in letters again, and walk away. But for us, we're folks who are doing this on the daily. These dictate a significant portion of our workday. They dictate our budgets. They dictate our team size. They dictate how late we're working tonight. And the reason I've included this list is because I personally have worked hands-on in helping organizations with compliance and security related efforts around every one of these. Everything from training bank examiners in Arlington to helping organizations with an international footprint understand how to avoid pretty significant privacy related fines, to ensuring that credit cards are protected. And what I have found in my own career, I've also never worked in an organization that has only had to worry about one of these. This notion of multi-compliancy is standard. It's the unfortunate reality in which we live, which only drives the need to better understand why are we doing this? How do we do it quickly, efficiently, and effectively? And how do we meet these commitments, these obligations? How do we do right by our clients and our customers who may not understand these acronyms, but they still have the expectation that we're protecting their information, that the services and systems that they've come to rely on are going to be there when they need them. So I suspect if you want to chime in and chat with how many you're bound by, I don't know, Chris, that we have a prize for the organization bound by the most, but you do have my sympathy and my camaraderie that I feel that challenge, that pain. Do you want to jump to the next one, Chris?
Yeah, and I can think of a few folks that are on this call that I do work with who would might win that prize, Jared. And that's a good segue because one of the compliance challenges is the constant change to those regulations. You might think that you have your arms around them and you build a program, and then all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from underneath you, and there's a major change to that regulation or to many that causes you to have to uproot your program or make major changes to it. And so I just took a few that were listed on the previous slide and just wanted to speak to the changes that they have had over the past couple of years and how major that can be to an individual, to an organization who is just looking to keep their head above water, right? HIPAA is a great example because they have just finally made a major proposal to the security rule that, if passes as it stands, will be a major change. And this is difficult because the proposal to HIPAA specifically is removing a lot of those flexibility requirements that a lot of organizations, especially like a smaller practice, for example, has been able to sort of take, resolve in and kind of set up compensating controls instead of having to meet every single requirement. But a lot of these regulations that are beginning to change and evolve over time are getting a lot stricter and a lot more granular in their requirements. So in the past, where they might have allowed some leeway with the controls like multi-factor authentication, now with these updates to a proposal like HIPAA, they are being very, very exact in their requirements for MFA. And if you go to the website, the General Health's website, and look at the public comments that are available to review based on the feedback for the proposal, you will see a lot of organizations and people have gone out of their way to kind of criticize this proposal and say, where did the flexibility go? Where is the compensating controls and the ability for a smaller organization to kind of work around some of these? And that's the challenge with some of these updating proposals and regulations. So to Jared's prior point, the multitude of having to comply with many, and as well as the change to many, can create a pretty large burden.
And
Jared, back to you.
thank you, Chris. One of the resources that I've used over the years is the Unified Compliance Framework. If you're not familiar, I've got a link here. And as I mentioned in chat, we will be sharing the slides after. I think, Duran, you mentioned that as well. The number of authority documents, the number of authorities, the number of controls that this organization has captured and crosswalked and cross-mapped and whatever the lingo is staggering. And for folks who are fans of nerdy cartoons like I am, XKCD has a brilliant little strip on, oh, there are too many competing standards. I need to create the one ring to rule them all. And now we have one more competing standard. And unfortunately, that's part of it. The benefit, the value that I think organizations like this bring is what Chris and I do in our daily work, is say, well, we don't need to comply with 20 different controls. It's just that you have 20 different regulations that are all saying the same thing. Let's find one way to demonstrate that you're doing what each one of these suggests that you do, or demands rather that you do. Can you jump to the next? I mentioned earlier that I have worked with clients here at Side Channel where some of this has been internal chatter. Very candidly, I push for this with every one of my clients. If you were going to make an investment in technology or in an assessment, an audit around SOC 2 Type 2, or the one client that I supported who was in healthcare technology, around HIPAA and high trust in particular, you should be very vocal about that in the market. Consumers at the electronic, what is it? It's EC3, the consumer trade show that happens in Vegas every year. A few years back, one of the most common questions that consumers were asking are, yeah, this is neat, but is it secure? And as somebody who has friends who hack baby monitors and garage door openers and all the Internet of Things devices that we're adding to our houses, all ethically, of course, I've seen that drive firsthand. People want to know, if I'm going to use your stuff, can I trust it? And my healthcare tech company said, yeah, you know what? We're going to pursue high trust. We've been doing SOC 2 for years. And if we can get that basic, help me out, Chris, I'm going to lean on you. E1, is that my memory?
E1, I1, and R2. Yep.
Yeah, they just said, let's just start E1, basic entry level. They took a look at the controls, they crosswalked that against their SOC 2, and they said, we're doing 95% of this already. I said, yeah, so let's do high trust. Let's get that E1 and then put it on your website, put it on your marketing brochures, engage your sales team. Let me talk to them about what this means for clients who are putting their healthcare data in your system. And the benefit for them is that their primary competitor in the market wasn't even close to being ready. And I need to check. I think they may have acquired that competitor since then, but that's neither here nor there. And then the organization that I'm supporting right now, I have an educational technology company that delivers curriculum for students with special needs. And they have hundreds of thousands of records of kids. And as a dad, I wanted my kids, when all my kids are adults now, but they're still kids. And when they became adults, I wanted them to be able to start their adult life without any significant disruption. If your identity's stolen when you're in the fourth grade, and then you turn 18 years later and find out that you've already got default loans and credit cards, and you can't get a loan for a car. You can't apply to get your own apartment. The disruption and damage to somebody's life, it's not just a data security issue, folks. And so the organization said, we're doing a lot around protecting these kids' data. We want everybody who uses our software to know that. And so their driver for pursuing SOC 2 was just that. And are they using it in their marketing language? Do they have dedicated pages on their website that proudly display the SOC 2 compliant logo? You better believe they do. So it's something that I would encourage you to do. It's not a negative to pursue these certifications if you're intentional about messaging that to the people who rely on your organizations. Do you want to move to the polling question? Thank you.
Sure. All right, everyone. So we are now at our first polling question. So please remember to click on that conference's IO button to prompt it. What is the most common method attackers use to gain initial access to a network? Is it physical theft, phishing emails, social media posts, or USB drives?
As folks are answering, I love this question, Chris, because I did spend a number of years working in penetration testing, and I have used all of these.
But there really isn't a wrong answer, is there?
Right. But there is one that I tended to be consistently successful with. So I think I know the answer.
So 94% of our audience so far has said phishing emails. Is that aligned with your experience, Jared?
Yeah, without a doubt. It is so much easier than the technical hacking. It's also a lot easier than having to be there physically and present. You can be targeted instead of hoping somebody finds your social media post. You're actually there doing it directly. So that has been my experience. Yes.
All right, we'll keep it moving, folks. So you should still have a little bit of time to answer that if you hadn't already. Make sure you do. So moving on to some other challenges that a lot of the organizations that we work with are facing. And from my perspective, working a lot in the healthcare space and the financial services space, governance and oversight continues to be a challenge. How do we effectively communicate cybersecurity trends, threats, and the going-ons to our governing body, the board of directors, the board of trustees? How do we know that they have the tools and the information that they need to give us the resources that we need to carry out and implement our cybersecurity program? It's a large issue, right? I was actually at a conference 2 weeks ago, and I had the opportunity to give a speaking session on this topic, right, on data security for boards. And in the audience was a majority of board members. So I was speaking directly to them about what's going on and what is their responsibility regarding cybersecurity and reaffirming the information security program. And at the end of the presentation, I got a lot of good feedback. Many people said it was great and good information, but believe it or not, a couple board members actually came up to me and was like, hey, like, I appreciate this, but a lot of this is really difficult to understand. And I would have even appreciated if you were even more high level and was more broad about some of these terms, because a lot of it just goes in one ear and out the other. And I'm admitting some of my own faults here, and I don't know what I don't know. A lot of them had said to me. So that's feedback for me. Next time I do a presentation like that, it's like, hey, in order to get information to our boards, we really, really have to kind of break it down to its most meaningful and basic concepts.
Definitely.
And at those conferences where I'm kind of meeting people or I'm in a boardroom, one of the questions I like to ask to get a gauge on where they stand with cybersecurity awareness is simply, hey, what are your biggest threats? Do you know what they are? Could you speak to them a little bit? And sometimes you might get a response where a board member or an executive member might say something like, yeah, we do have a lot of outdated systems and we're working on it, but it currently is presenting some vulnerabilities for us because of those old legacy systems. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Or someone else might say something like, these phishing emails, man, a lot of our users and staff continue to fall for them, and it is a big problem of ours. Yeah. So to me, when someone says that, that shows that they have a sense of what's going on and where their biggest issues reside because it has been effectively communicated up the chain to them. But on the flip side of that, sometimes if I ask that question, I might get a response like, well, I don't know, but we have an IT guy or gal who is on top of it and they know the network inside and out.
Yeah.
Or we get a report every year and it has all that information in there. Now, when I get those responses, that tells me that we have some work to do. Jared, I don't know if you have experienced something similar when you're talking to board members, but
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to interject. Your comment about language cannot be understated. I just want to emphasize that. Um, I had a conversation with one of the VCSOs on my team. In addition to supporting clients in the field, I also have an entire team of VCSOs that I support behind the scenes to make sure they've got what they need. And we were having a conversation about something very similar, and he came to the realization that there were things that he knew and just accepted as part of his common knowledge, his day-to-day thinking, and that knowledge had come from he's like me, 20 plus, yeah, he's probably closer to 30 years in the space. And we slip into language, we slip into habits, and we don't always realize that the person on the other side of the conversation is coming from a very different place, very different set of experiences, backgrounds. And your point, Chris, that especially folks on the board, these folks didn't get there. It's not that they're stupid. It's not that they're ignorant. Quite the opposite. They're usually very accomplished, well-informed, experienced folks. They just haven't been hands to keyboard like a lot of folks who work in technical roles. And finding the language that resonates is one of the most important things that you can develop. That's an incredible skill to build out.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So this next slide kind of goes back to some of the multitudes of staying on top of laws and regulations as they come. And one of the challenges of regulatory expectations, as well as the increase of some of the threats that we're going to get into, is the need to report an incident when something goes wrong. And the point I wanted to make here on this slide is, hey, there might be a lot of obligations that your organization has in the event of a reportable cyber incident. Pretty much every single law and statute, data privacy regulation in the United States, whether it's at the federal level or the state level, has its own set of cyber incident reporting requirements that your organization probably should be aware of if you have to meet it, right? So I put a common example here where a particular organization might have to meet all three of these regulations. At the federal level, they might have to comply with the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. At the state level, they might have the New York State Department of Financial Services, as well as SHIELD for the data privacy of residents. And if they were faced with a situation where they had to report a data security incident, they had to report to the state attorney general for SHIELD as soon as possible. So that's kind of vague a little bit. They also have to report to DFS, which is a different portal to report that is SHIELD, but now we have 72 hours to do so. And then at the federal level, notifying the FTC within 30 days of an incident to that portal. So it kind of speaks to the need to make sure our incident response plans are up to date and include all of the necessary reporting requirements that we may or may not have to deal with. And I wanted to include a nice little visual of just how thrilled you might be here on this bottom right picture if you had to report all these in the event of that incident.
One thing I want to add to this, Chris, and I love that visual. That's exactly how I've been on every incident that I've supported over the years. That is true to form. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. As I look at these requirements, the other thing I want to emphasize is, there is a least common denominator that we can look through here. And the as soon as possible, in my experience, encourages people to act before they're ready to act. And it's okay to tell your folks to slow down. That I was working in an organization that was being acquired. They had healthcare data. They were being acquired by a very large benefits provider. And in the midst of this, they had a minor security incident. Someone started using the word breach, which triggered all these notification requirements, and they almost sent an external facing communication that would have not only been unnecessary, the incident was not a breach. It was a much smaller issue, but would have killed this multi-million-dollar acquisition because it would have the disruption just would have been unnecessary. And as soon as possible doesn't mean the second you find out, but when you have had time to take stock of what actually happened, to be able to provide the organization requesting the information with a well-informed response. So don't feel that you have to move too quickly. Be reasonable, find those least common denominators, and then meet the requirements from there. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Thank you. And so
on that, sorry, did you want to say something here?
Nope, I was just going to tee up here with a little bit of a segue. So
sure.
Please take it away.
If you want to jump right into the next slide, talking about threats and vulnerabilities, back to what we were just talking about, language is important. One of the other things that I overlooked in introducing myself, I teach courses on LinkedIn Learning. I built a relationship with them almost 6 years ago. Depending on how you count the courses and which languages you're including, I think I'm up over 40 courses in the library. And one of the earliest courses I developed was soft skills for information security professionals, in an effort to help people understand how do we have conversations with non-technical people about technical stuff. Even when we're in a room and everyone is an accomplished IT or security professional, do the words that we're using mean the same thing to everybody in the room? And in my experience, that answer is often no. So let's take a minute before we go any further and look at some of the language we're going to be using in just a moment. The words threat, vulnerability, attack, and exploit. If you present those 4 words in conversation to a board member, to Chris's point, it may be in one ear out the other. They may all be similar enough that they can, okay, that's security, that's bad, move on. But each of these terms in our world is very unique. A threat can do the bad stuff. It's capable of inflicting harm. It's think of a threat, or I prefer the term threat actor. A vulnerability is the thing the threat uses to inflict harm, or that rather exploits, takes advantage of. And exploit is the method or act of taking advantage of that vulnerability. And all of this is wrapped up in the attack. So a threat actor when attacking an organization would exploit a vulnerability, if that all makes sense. And I just want to take a moment to touch on those terms because I may be using them throughout the rest of the conversation today. And I don't want to conflate. I want to make certain that we're making a distinction among them. Next slide, please. Another way to represent that information I've found is through a funnel. This is not pyramid scheme, but rather a narrowing down, if you will. There are a lot of threats and threat actors in the world. It's very unfortunate right now that what we're seeing in the cybersecurity space, trying to protect organizations, there has been an uptick in activity from nation state actors based on some global activity, some geopolitical events. So there are quite a few threats in the world that we have to be concerned about, whether it's nation state actor, an organized criminal organization, or a high schooler who just downloaded a new Python library and is curious, what does this do? The number of vulnerabilities that are available for those threat actors to take advantage of is smaller, and hopefully getting smaller. If you're performing vulnerability management, you're taking action to ensure that your organization has addressed vulnerabilities in your environment. And just because you have a vulnerability doesn't mean that there's an exploit available. There may be a way to remotely take entire control of one of the systems in your environment. We often in cybersecurity call that remote code execution. I can sit here in my home office and take full control of one of your servers, not with admin credentials, but rather by taking advantage of an exploitable vulnerability. And what I'm going to do when I take that threat, the vulnerabilities that are available, the exploits that can take advantage of those vulnerabilities, then we need to look at, okay, what attacks are we most likely to face? What I found is this mental model helps me not burn out as a cybersecurity professional. I don't need to protect against everything. I don't need to fix every vulnerability. I need to be well informed about exploits. I need visibility into attacks against not only my organization, but similar organizations. And then I take all that information and make well-informed decisions about where I'm going to allocate resources in protecting the organization. So I wanted to share that model with the group here today. Hopefully it will help you as much as it's helped me. Can you jump down? And I did want to round this out. I know I've been talking security for these last couple of slides, but I wanted to look at a compliance model here. I mentioned earlier that I've had organizations who have pursued security programs and compliance controls because they had deals that depended. They had customers who insisted, we need you to be secure. So let me ask you, if you could pull up the first one, Chris. You have two organizations that you're choosing from, two products, two solutions. Your company is considering two different vendors to solve the same problem. And you go look at both their products, their websites, and they are so close that if you lean back and squint your eyes, you can't tell the difference. They look almost identical. Can you add the one more feature here, Chris? So what if you, as a buyer, as a representative of your organization, are evaluating these two solutions, and one of them does not have a certification around security, but the other one has been audited against the SOC 2 Type 2 trusted security criteria by a CPA. And the firm who stands behind that logo has said, we vouch for these folks. We've looked at their controls and they're doing a good job. Which of these two are you going to recommend that your organization buys? It's not just that there are a couple of instances that Jared's run into this in his own career. I suspect that if you are at all involved in evaluating purchasing services or solutions for your company, that you're going to find this distinction as well. Next slide, please. I think we have another polling question.
Yeah. Yes, we do. So we will launch our second polling question now. What does the term ransomware refer to? Is it a type of firewall, a tool for encrypting company data, Is it malware that demands payment to restore access to data, or is it a secure backup system? So make sure you submit those responses. We will keep it moving. But looks like a lot of folks have correctly pointed out that it is malware, in fact, that demands payment to, hopefully, I should add, restore access to data.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we all know that word, isn't it?
Yeah, a little
But
ubiquitous
it
at this
would be
point.
such a more peaceful uh, job, industry, world if that word didn't exist. But in our world over at Side Channel, um, a lot of the organizations that we help are building out security programs or trying to understand how to achieve these security and compliance requirements from their customers. But we're skating to where the puck is going. We're looking ahead. Years ago, I was delivering a presentation I developed at conferences on post-quantum computing and how advances in quantum computing, stuff that most of us don't follow day to day unless you're heavily involved in that space. There have been some pretty amazing advances, though, that are going to fundamentally change the world for the better. And at the same time, introduce risks that we are not ready for. Likewise, we've seen such an uptick in supply chain vulnerabilities, third party, fourth party, nth party, that I don't need to attack you directly. I just need to attack somebody you trust. The SolarWinds breach from recent years is one of the most prominent examples where you've got a technology that's got administrative rights across so many systems and customer environments, and attack criminals understood that I could try to target thousands of companies around the world, or I could target one, SolarWinds. And unfortunately, their success led to some damage. LastPass, who I was a LastPass customer for years, unfortunately, some of the same problems. I don't need to guess your passwords if I can get into LastPass and just download them, not just yours, but everybody's. So we're seeing supply chain vulnerabilities, ransomware. It's becoming a little more sophisticated, and not just ransomware. Ransomware is often accompanied by data exfiltration attacks, smoke and mirrors. Hey, everybody, look over here. Well, this ransomware incident has brought you to a grinding halt. I'm going to steal your data because nobody's watching the other side of the house. And then the advent of artificial intelligence, and we're not quite to Terminator general AI just yet, but uh, I suspect if I were to ask for a poll, how many of you are using AI in your organizations today? That reluctantly everyone would raise their hand because whether or not you have a policy, somebody is using AI in some capacity or another. And we understand that cloud security, I know is kind of hard to see in this graphic, but as more and more organizations are trying to understand what's the balance between the stuff that we keep in a data center, the stuff that we keep in an infrastructure as a service provider, or the SaaS provider relationships, which overlaps the supply chain vulnerability and the cloud misconfiguration issues. There's a level of complexity to any one of these that could be overwhelming, but every one of these is something that we need to keep our eyes on to understand this may not be impacting my organization significantly today, but it will. And when it does, am I ready? Have I laid the foundation on which I can build controls and programs that will ideally prevent disruption from a security incident while allowing us to continue to move at the pace we want to move? Do you want to move to the next slide, Chris?
Sure. Before I get into some geopolitical threats, we had a question in the chat from Keith. Is there a central authority to validate SOC 2 certifications if we suspect the provided SOC report might not be legitimate? I certainly do not know if there is a central authority. Jared, maybe you might, but I would be happy to go back to our SOC team here at Foxpoint and get their thoughts. They might be able to chime in and follow up.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a central authority who polices that. I love the question, Keith.
Yeah. What I
Um,
was, go ahead.
I was going to say, as a penetration tester in a former life, I am keenly aware that there are organizations who will sell you a penetration test and deliver a vulnerability scan, which
Yep.
is very different.
Yep.
And I know with the work that I've done with different SOC 2 auditors over the years, some are a little more. Um, I'm looking for the right word here, Chris. I want to be polite. So
That's
some
okay.
take
You're not
the
gonna hurt my feelings.
all right. Well, I know. I've worked with Foxpoint enough to know that you're on the side that you're one of the folks I'll call. I have folks I won't call, and it's reputational. And I think that, Keith, is where you might get the more direct answer. Um, if you poke around on Reddit in particular, there I promise you, without looking, there's a subreddit where somebody is having a conversation about the SOC 2 auditor that you may be referring to, or that may have prompted that question. I'll put it that way. And if you've got someone that enough folks have chimed in and said, they're kind of sketch, that might carry just as much weight as a central authority. But no, I think Chris, your offer to look into it is a good way to get to the heart of that. Love the question.
I do too. I will look into it for you. And I also, as I'm thinking about it, this is why we have third-party due diligence programs internally
Mhm.
to sort of do our own data assurance assessments in addition to the SOC 2 reports. I would imagine, um, if you're going about your due diligence for a critical third party and you receive a SOC report that you're a little suspicious about, and then you collect some additional documentation, let's say the information security policy from that vendor, just by reviewing that policy, you might be able to immediately raise some internal red flags about that SOC 2 report. Something might not be
Yeah.
matching up correctly, right? They might have in the SOC 2 report said the access controls look great. And then you look at the information security policy and there is no access control mentioned at all. So that would be a red flag. So I will look into a central authority, but and I will follow up with you. So great question. Let's keep moving. Jared spoke a little bit about geopolitical threats, so I won't dive into this a little bit too much, but he is certainly correct that it is not so much more of a theoretical threat that we don't have to worry about anymore. There are actual threat actors that are exploiting vulnerabilities and perpetrating attacks here in the United States to homegrown organizations. Matter of fact, the outgoing FBI director when he had one of his final exit interviews, stated that the critical issue that the now incoming presidential administration is going to face is cybersecurity threats from nation state actors. It's a pretty jarring and important thing for an outgoing FBI director to state on record. And both that organization, the FBI, and CISA has recognized this as a critical issue. We have seen Russian state threat actors compromising Microsoft email systems and Chinese threat actors taking down some telecommunications companies. Another example of this that is kind of beginning to sort of manifest itself is in the cryptocurrency world, right? A lot of mining facilities are being built and are popping up here in the United States. There's one right in my hometown's backyard, Seneca Lake, that has been built. And believe it or not, and this probably isn't a surprise to many people, but the equipment that is used to build that mining facility, a lot of it comes from China. It comes from a Chinese manufacturer. And there is some suspicion that some of the embedded equipment in that mining facility production is being embedded with malware or some sort of cyber malicious, equipment. That is a real concern. And matter of fact, last year there was one of these cryptocurrency mining facilities built in Wyoming near a U.S. military base. And the Biden administration did not like this at all. They had suspicions that there was maybe some, cyber spyware going on, so they shut it down. Didn't really even have solid evidence that there was anything malicious occurring, but they didn't like it, so they shut it down. Kind of speaks to this growing threat of geopolitical cyber, attacks. And I wanted to highlight briefly this mention of Volt Typhoon. It is kind of the way that a lot of these, nation state threat actors, launch their attacks, and they do this by living off the land. They get in, they find a way to exploit a vulnerability, and they kind of lay low for a little while, you know, doing some reconnaissance, um, exploiting missing or poorly implemented controls. So there might be some outdated systems that they can get in and kind of lay low for a little while. And I will get in a couple slides an example of how this played out in the financial services world. Furthermore, Jared also mentioned supply chain threats. Absolutely, if one major vendor is taken down, then there is a catastrophic downstream effect oftentimes. Think of Change Healthcare, one of the largest data breaches in history that occurred last year. That was that all kind of started because, going back one previous slide, a Russian ransomware group kind of took things down at Change Healthcare, which affected hospitals across the country. And this speaks to the need to sort of evaluate the information security programs at our third-party service providers. Oftentimes, the reason a cybersecurity attack happens is because it initiated at one of our vendors. It's one of the most common ways that we have a reportable data breach on our hands is because our vendors did. And the reality is, if your vendor has a data breach, you probably do as well. That needs to be reported, that
Yeah.
needs to be taken care of.
No, that's a great point, Chris. And I did want to mention, we're obviously bringing a lot of stories, a lot of examples here today, folks, and that's by design. Regardless of your industry, the role that you're filling today, we want to equip you with stories that you can take back when you're having conversations with your teams, your leadership, about changes you may want to consider making and why. Even if it's a different industry. The example, Chris, that you just shared about the United, the health change breach, um, yeah, just as applicable conceptually in financial services as it is in healthcare. And again, the reason we want to share the slides after we're done is so that if there is a story that resonates with you today, that you remember, you can go back, you can look, find your own articles, and help to build the conversation that you want to have with leadership. And on that note, I'm watching the clock as we're talking. Chris and I knew full well coming in today that we probably had 4 hours worth of things that we wanted to share with you. And so we'll squeeze as much as we can in the time we have left. But even if we don't cover everything, folks, we are available after if you want to reach out to either Fox Point side channel for conversations. Clearly, we love educating and helping folks out. So one of the things I wanted to make sure to emphasize, though, is when we're talking about all these breaches and security incidents, there's a certain fatigue that can weigh on us in this industry, in this space. It's, oh, there were 12 breaches today. Okay, sure. Right. Did they affect me directly? No. I've got to get back to what I was doing. There's a bigger question. Why does any of this matter? Not just to us, but to the people we work with, to friends and family outside of work. And when I look at identity-based attacks in particular, uh, if we have a breach, and when we were preparing the presentation, I found this story. It was like right in the middle of Chris and I talking, this story dropped. That there were 184 million passwords exposed in a security breach. Unfortunately, this is a drop in the bucket compared to the 16 billion, I think was the number that came out with the Facebook accounts, the Gmail accounts, the Apple accounts. And we look at that and say, okay, so what? What am I going to do about it? They're on the dark web. Why does that matter to me? Well, if you're using a password that's in one of these data dumps, and you don't have multi-factor authentication turned on, or if you do, but your employees just keep getting pop-ups all day saying, will you accept this login request. A lot of times folks will click yes just to get it to go away. They'll think it's some bug, some weird thing happening with their computer, and they don't always understand that it might be an attacker who has their password. And so when we're looking at these attacks, it's not just that the thing happened, it's that there are threat actors who will use this data later on to try to continue to attack organizations of all sizes. They're not just going after the giant national financial institutions. If you're using technology, that's enough for them to consider you a target. Can you jump to the next slide, Chris? So the question that I would have for you is, do you have a password that appears in one of these data breaches? And I think, especially given the 16 billion that was announced, that's probably a strong yes. So then the question I would encourage you to take back, if you're talking about something like a password dump that's found on the dark web, does any employee or contractor who works for your organization have a password in that list? And if the answer is yes, I promise you, as a penetration tester, someone will try to use that. I had some years ago, a friend of mine, penetration tester, worked for the same consulting company that I worked for, uh, launched a password spraying attack against a company that we were targeting. And if you're not familiar, password spraying takes one password and tries it against every account in the organization. Because if any of you have policies in place that will lock an account after one failed login attempt, there's a pretty good chance the person who put that policy in place is no longer with the organization. Probably didn't make a lot of friends with leadership. So password spraying just tries one password. Is anybody using this password? And my friend was able to compromise 3 contractor accounts, the 1099s, with a password that he had in one of these lists. The second half of the engagement, he was able to walk into their office during the day, plug into a network jack, and access things on the network using those credentials that he stole from this remote, simple attack. Just had one password. Long story short, he walked away with their entire VMware infrastructure, and he had a terabyte hard drive. And I'm dating myself here because that was one of the largest portable hard drives you could buy on the market at the time. And he had to leave when it was full. He could have continued stealing data from the organization. And thank goodness it was us who did that, a pen testing company that was hired by the organization to identify exposures. But when we're talking about things like password dumps and some of these other incidents we've talked about today, if you look at that long tail of how somebody going to use this information to target our organization, I've seen firsthand just how much someone can steal in a heartbeat. So just wanted to emphasize that. If you want to jump ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to, I think if it's okay with you, Jared, I'll go to our third polling question to make sure we
Please
get
do. Yeah, we're
through them.
right toward. Yep.
I will go ahead and launch that.
Great.
So, which of the following is the most effective component of a cybersecurity program? Deploying vulnerability management tools, antivirus software, regular employee training, and configuring firewalls. Please make sure you go ahead and submit that response.
This is an interesting one to me, by the way. I have an opinion, um, although I've also had experiences that make me question whether or not my own answer is correct. Um, but I do appreciate, and just to let folks know, even if the answer that you provide is not the answer that is correct, that's not a bad thing. There are, with this question in particular, I think I could make the case that we could interpret a couple of different answers here. Being able to interpret it for your own organization is the most important takeaway.
And so with the time that we have left, make sure everyone gets their CPE. Duran is going to just automatically launch our fourth polling question. So make sure you answer that. And then with the time that we have left, Jared and I will just go ahead and finish off a few slides. And I wanted to make sure we at least got to this one, Jared, because I thought that this was a fun one.
We've got a loading. Oh yeah. Yeah, and the thing that concerns me the most about that one, Chris, is that I think that video is a few years old. That did not drop this week, folks. That's been out there for a minute. I know when I worked at the Ohio State University for a bit, and they invited me to do an annual cybersecurity awareness training event. And I asked them to give me a video of the CISO's introduction to the event. It took me uh, $10, maybe half an hour of me recording the same video, and I was able to create a deep fake that superimposed my face on his, and made it look like I was the one delivering the introduction to the event. So the simplicity, that's a good one, but that technology is so accessible. You wanted to talk about that, I think, a bit here as well.
Yeah. I think what we'll probably have to do, Jared, is do a part two to our presentation.
I'm
We're
up for
building out the cybersecurity program. But I guess AI is a good one to finish on with the few minutes that we have left.
yeah.
And going back to the deepfake slide, I remember hearing a story last year where there was sort of that first major instance of somebody falling for a deepfake scam, where they actually got on the phone with who they thought was their CFO,
Mm.
and turns out it was not their CFO. It was a deepfake of someone impersonating that CFO who was demanding a wire payment of $2 million, and that person obliged. So just goes to show where we're kind of heading with AI-powered cyber attacks.
Yeah, telling your
Uh,
CFO no is not a good, what do they call it? A CLM, career limiting move.
yeah.
So yeah,
So I wanted to just share some things that I've come across with AI and how it's kind of being rolled out at some of the clients that I work with. Some are kind of putting a stake in the ground and saying, "Hey, we're not doing this right now," in terms of like pulling a product off the shelf, or they're kind of blocking access to some of those commonly used generative AI websites like ChatGPT or Copilot. What I recommend is just developing a policy somewhere to start that defines that acceptable use. Um, it really is a good way to get started, and then help you define your strategy. Maybe a committee, a subcommittee of a already existing IT steering one that will help you define business goals, develop that strategy, because I think a lot of organizations that are rolling into AI have kind of done so very, very quickly, and I understand why, but they have done so without sort of that business case and the problem that they're trying to solve or the answer that they're looking for. And that's why developing that strategy, getting a group together, is a good place to start. And then this final bullet down here, vendor, talk to your vendors about AI. They certainly are using it, especially to provide a lot of those technical services that you rely on them for. So it's going to be critical to speak with them, ask them about their AI practices, maybe get into your contracts that, hey, if there is AI being used, that you have a right to sort of understand it and get assurance that if your organization is kind of flowing through a model, that your information is being protected. They should be able to provide you with that level of assurance. All right. And then I think this might be a good one to end on. Jared, do you want to kind of finish us off?
Yeah, just a very recent example that you can read about on both LinkedIn and I included the CNN link on the story. We saw this here at the federal level. Somebody used that same attack that Chris mentioned against the CFO, only used it for the White House chief of staff. It's one thing to consider, oh, this could be disruptive to our business. It's another thing to think, oh, this could be manipulating members at the highest level of government to take action. And all the more reason for us to have conversations like the one we're having today so that we can better understand how do we do this stuff in a secure and reasonable manner. How do we embrace innovation without adding unmeasurable or unacceptable level of risk? So would encourage you, uh, we included links to the stories. We've also included some other guidance and references. But I think the most important takeaway, Chris, is Chris and I are both available for discussion. We've got our contact information in the slides. We're both fairly active on LinkedIn. Please, if there's anything that has struck a chord today that you want to continue the conversation on, we'd encourage that outreach. This is very important to us. We've built careers around it because of how important it is. And if you'd like to hear us get together again and continue to ramble and tell stories, we're up for it. So, Chris,
Yeah.
thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jared. I love
Mhm.
hearing you tell stories too. You're good at that.
I've got a lot.
Um,
I've got a lot.
I think we know what we need to do next. We need to make a part two about what that cyber program looks like from the ground up. I guess it's a little bit more fun to just tell the stories, but hey, that's an important piece too. So
Mhm.
thank you everyone for your time again and for joining us. We will be mailing out the content, so if you missed that part two, you'll be able to kind of see what content we had here on the back end for you. And we look forward to next time. So thank you so much.
Excellent. Absolutely. Thanks all. Take care.
Have a great rest of your day.